Let's discuss briefly PE files. So what are PE files? PE files are basically the file format for executables, DLLs, and .sys files. So if you use Windows a lot, you've almost certainly encountered .exes in the form of installers. .dlls are libraries of code that are available to be referenced by other applications. For example, Microsoft might make available a DLL that has the code for graphical user interface functions such as windows and pop-ups. .sys files are basically drivers. The PE itself is a data structure that instructs Windows on how to load a file and how to parse it. In other words, it takes a sequence of bytes and gives it a structure. It tells you which file type it is, where to find a given section, when the file was created, and which operating system it is compatible with. And the initials PE stand for portable executable. So let's take a look at a diagram of a PE file. So you have a header and then sections. The header itself consists of several subheaders. There's a DOS header, a PE header, optional header, which is actually existent in almost all applications, a sections table, and then you have the code and imports and data itself. So let's see what exactly each of these does. So the first part of every PE file you'll see is the DOS header, and it usually starts with letters MZ, standing for the initials of the creator of the DOS linker. It's not very important, but you'll recognize it if you look at the byte sequence. The DOS header is used for backwards compatibility, and Grace will decline to run new file types. For instance, if you try to run a new file on a DOS system, it will say this is not compatible in DOS. And it's not extremely useful for our purposes since it's existent in all the PE files. The PE header is much more interesting. It'll list information such as when the file was compiled. It will list whether it's a 32-bit or 64-bit application. It's going to list the import address table, which we're going to encounter a bit later. And it's going to tell you where to find the resources, icons, and audio that the file is going to need. Next, we have the optional header, which, like I mentioned, is almost always present, and it can have all sorts of interesting information, such as the size of the code on disk, the checksum for the file, size of the stack and heap, and very importantly, the entry point, the address of the entry point of the code. Then we have the sections table, and that's going to tell you what the sections are in this file. So it might be .text section, .resource section, etc. And it's going to list some information about these, such as the raw size, the virtual size. So that's the basics of a PE file. And what we're going to do is we're going to mine this information and build a machine learning system using it to determine if an unknown file is benign or malicious.